God is big enough to accomplish His will and His purpose regardless of people's agendas. We see this clearly here in Paul's imprisonment. Their agenda in throwing Paul in prison was to prevent Paul from continuing to preach the gospel. Their agenda was to stop Paul from proclaiming the gospel. And yet what we see is that when they threw Paul into prison, it didn't prevent Paul from preaching the gospel, it just gave him a new audience. Now Paul is preaching the gospel to the imperial guard. Paul is preaching the gospel to the other prisoners. Paul is preaching the gospel to whoever might be in front of him. It didn't prevent Paul from preaching the gospel, it just gave him a new audience. But not only do we see this truth at work in Paul's life, that God is bigger than people's agendas, that Christ is bigger than people's agendas, we see this so clearly through the life and death of Jesus Christ. You see, when people arrested Jesus, when they spit on Jesus, when they mocked Jesus, when they nailed Jesus to a cross, when they shoved that spear in his side, it was all done with an agenda. Their desire, their agenda was to shut Jesus up. Their desire was to see Jesus dead. They just wanted Jesus gone. But I want you to hear me today, church. Christ is bigger. And so they put Jesus in a tomb and they rolled that giant stone in front of the tomb. Their agenda was that no one would come in, that no one would get out. But I want to remind you, church, that Christ is bigger. On the third day, that stone was rolled away and Jesus walked out of that tomb victorious over death and the grave. And anyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. If you haven't heard me say it already, Christ is bigger.